Welcome to segment two of Joe and the Fat Man. Joe Smelter, Kyle Golick, Jay Hallahan with you. As always, we're almost exactly a month from week one, Penn State season opener against Nevada at Beaver Stadium, 3:30 on CBS. And to talk really ever since the immediate aftermath of the Notre Dame Orange Bowl college football playoff loss when we found out Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Denied Dennis Sutton, etc. were coming back for one more ride. The talk has been about expectations. Is this the best team in the James Franklin era? Is this the best team anywhere in the country in 2025? People have been talking about that, and they'll be talking about it at the very least until September 27th when Penn State takes on Oregon. And if Penn State wins that game, they'll be talking about it until Penn State plays Ohio State in early November. But at Big Ten Media Days, as one could imagine, James Franklin was asked about these expectations, and here is what he said. There's a ton of conversations that are happening nationally, right? And we embrace that. We've earned that based on what we've been able to do and what we have coming back. There's a lot of people that are excited on the national level talking about us. But the reality is, when it comes to the last football building and when it comes to local support, these are always the expectations of Penn State. We had what a lot of people would consider a really good season last year. We were a game away from playing for the national championship, and you could actually make the argument a drive away from playing for the national championship, which he's right about that. But Franklin says it doesn't feel that way because the expectations of Penn State are really high. So we embrace that. And then at the end, Franklin kind of continues talking about how expectations of Penn State are always really high and fans are expecting the best and etc. So on the surface, none of this is really controversial, right? Penn State is a big time program. Some feel that it's a blue blood and there's expectations that come every season. But I think James is kidding himself if he thinks that the local fans and media are placing increased expectations on this team in addition to the national media and fans. I feel that that really doesn't give Penn State fans in particular enough credit because Penn State fans, and I'm not talking about the Cougs that'll, chant Fire Franklin after losing to the eventual national champion by 7 points, which that's happened 2 seasons in a row, by the way. There's always people that are going to come in whatever year with a national title or bust mindset, regardless of what Penn State has coming back and what the circumstances are. But I think most people judge years relative as to what the expectations were coming in. I think last season is a great example, and that's why I think Franklin's way off when he says it didn't feel like a successful year. Most people felt it was a very successful season, right? Penn State got to the college football playoff semifinal, won its first two college football playoff games, got to the Big Ten title game. And for a team that started the year on kind of the fringe of the top 10, that's pretty good, right? You'll take that. You'll definitely take a school record 13 wins. People were upset about losing to Notre Dame and the way Penn State lost to Notre Dame. Absolutely. But I think Penn State fans, by and large, felt that last year was a successful season. I think that's an example of how national title or bust seldom exists. And this is one of the few years where you could argue it does. And then another example of how Penn State fans are more rational than maybe James Franklin thinks they are is the Bill O'Brien tenure. Bill O'Brien went 15-9, and 15-9 doesn't look great, but because of what the circumstances were coming out of the sanctions, 15-9 was awesome. It borderline miraculous that Penn State was able to do that for 2 years, and I think Penn State fans appreciated that at the time. They still appreciate it, and that's why the 2012 season, despite going 8-4, that's on the wall of honor along with the 82, 86 national title teams, the other three undefeated teams under Paterno, and etc. So I get what James Franklin's doing. Like, obviously, recruits are going to listen. He wants Penn State to sound like a place where the best is expected and the standards are the highest they can be. But, I mean, this is a different season. I think Penn State fans are smart enough to know that this isn't just a normal off season in Happy Valley, and it won't be a normal regular season in Happy Valley.
He should have just came out at Big Ten Media Days and just say, guys, I'm just hoping we're bowl eligible this season. And just kind of let the reactions just fly at that point. But let's Joe, you're 100% right. James is just trying to curb everyone's enthusiasm, but it's not gonna happen. You got arguably the best offensive coordinator in the country in Andy Kotelnicki, who we had our friend of the shows, Mike Ostie, come on and say that prior to the Rich Rod movement, he was in the driver's seat to be the next coach in Morgantown in North Carolina, was interested prior to Landon Belichick. You got the best and most expensive defensive coordinator in history in Jim Knowles. Okay. You got the players that you've all alluded to that in that Miami hotel night kind of all said, if we're going to believe Nick Dawkins or Zachy Wheatley, I know one of the two said it at Big Ten Media Days, that the boys wanted to get the band back together for one more rodeo. Okay, I'll believe it if you want to tell it that way. I mean, I wasn't there, so I got to take their word for it. And you got a lot of high-end talent coming back. You are loaded at all levels. They rebuilt arguably their biggest weakness from last year, wide receiver, to having maybe the second.
I don't think that's very arguable.
No, not at all.
I mean, I think all of us here equaled what that unit did in the Orange Bowl in receptions in that game. So
that is factual.
The keyboard warrior for once played at the same level as the guys on the field.
Exactly.
13 wins, 2 playoff wins. They were, Joe, under a minute to go. Hadn't Cam Sutherland didn't fall down and Jalen Reed didn't get his ankles broken on Jaden Greathouse's touchdown, or the interception, we will refer to it as, to Christian Gray. Penn State was right there. I remember Kobe King saying to me after the Ohio State game last year, I think we're going to see these guys again. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, that's just a player thing, thinking best case scenario. Like, yeah, Kobe, you're on to something, and I'm walking away like, man, this guy must be dreaming. But he was almost right. Like, they were literally seconds away from making that a reality in Atlanta. This is I've been following Penn State, been a fan, all the above since the early 90s. I know we got fans that are older than me, and it's, I'm not saying I am the end all be all, but even 1994 wasn't this wild. I can even tell you for a fact, because I lived the 1997 preseason #1 and the good old LeVar Arrington Paterno Inferno infamous cover that's all out there. And it wasn't even remotely close to this. This is probably the highest expectations. And I'm reading right now, rereading, I should say, Mike Missinelli's book, The Perfect Season, that, goes over a lot of that, how that 85 team, because really think about it, 2024 Penn State was a lot like 1985 Penn State. We knew they would be good, but we didn't think, in 1985, they didn't think they were going to be 11-0, #1 in the nation, Orange Bowl bound against Oklahoma good. And, I'm willing to bet a lot of us last year were like, hey, we're going to take, 10-2. We're probably going to make the playoffs. Let's see if we can maybe win a game or so. Now, I don't think any of us last year were sitting here at this time saying, yeah, they're going to be within a minute of the national championship. You're going to have great expectations. And you know what? Another friend of the show, Steve Leonard of good old Buckeye Backers, was, everyone in this Ohio State media was drilling Penn State guys about this because this is a foreign territory to them. Penn State got the #1 position for the first time in the 15-year history of the Cleveland.com preseason Big Ten poll. This team's for real, guys. Embrace it. They handled it well. Drew handled it well in his 30 minutes there. James obviously had a good time with it. And by all accounts, Zachy and Nick did well. So sky's the limit with this team.
Yeah, I just had to double check. I have a copy of this year's Lindy Sports Previews. They're #2 in their top 25. #1's Texas, and you can make an argument that what Penn State's bringing back, they have more talent that has shown itself on the field than Texas. And you can make an argument Penn State could open the year up as the #1 team in the country. So to sit there and downplay it all you want, James, but your team's expectations are through the roof. he's trying to essentially give you coach speak, but there's really no coach speak about it when your team is possibly looking like it's a shoe-in for the semifinals this upcoming year, and it would be, I mean, everyone's dream for that to happen here in Penn State country.
The
Yeah.
Bible. Your preseason #1, and I'm going to try to get it in
Phil
there.
Steele, yeah.
Penn State.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of why Franklin answers the way he answers is to curb that enthusiasm, which Kyle mentioned. But at the same time, this goes back to a topic we discussed after the Blue White game when Franklin had his most recent encounter with a loudmouth Penn State fan. I feel like when Penn State fans criticize Franklin, if one fan is doing it, he hears 100. I feel like he magnifies those criticisms, and for that, like the fire Franklin chants, the guys heckling him going into the tunnel after a tough loss, he blows that up to more than what it actually is, and I think that leads to him having kind of a sense that a lot of Penn State fans are less rational than they really are. It's what you would call, the silent majority, but it really isn't the majority. I think most Penn State fans are rational. Most Penn State fans have their preseason expectations based on, the talent coming back, the coaches coming back, the schedule, whatever. But for whatever reason, James might be, I'm not saying this definitively. I'm saying it's a possible observation based on multiple encounters with fans after games that he might be a little insecure, and that insecurity leads to a thinking of the fan base that might not entirely be accurate. I'm not saying James Franklin doesn't appreciate Penn State fans. I've seen him do a lot of cool things with the fan base over the years, but there might be some aspects to where his interpretation of what the fan base believes might not entirely be that way.
Coaches do this all the time. That's the thing. You know, coaches have to create, motivation within their locker room. And, they're going to talk through the media to do that. They're going to, he's going to say stuff that's we're going to get us right in a certain way. And then he's going to hold up probably, Joe's article and say, the guy that was in the brown bomber leather jacket here, this is what he's saying about us. Even though I learned this from a couple of guys that have worked in this game for a long time. Coaches read and know everything and everybody. So James knows exactly what the score is. He can say he doesn't care, but that is a lie and a half. So in my mind, he's just trying to keep his team hungry, humble, and ready to go. I see no problem with it. At the end of the year, you can have your reflection and be able to say, this was it. But it's a long way to that point, and I can appreciate James. It's like you haven't won anything yet in the summer.
Yeah, I did like what he said is his quote from Big Ten Media Days, which a lot of outlets were in with, was who really cares about preseason rankings? And he's dead on.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. None of this is going to matter in a few months. And the teams you mentioned, the 97 team that started #1, the 99 team, which I think was #4, but was celebrated at a #1 ranking level because of what they had coming back with LeVar Arrington and Brandon Short. No, Penn State fans don't really remember those teams because each team lost 3 games, and that's a pretty forgettable season in Happy Valley. We'll see what ends up happening with this 2025 team. We'll have a lot of time to talk about that, but in our next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about recruiting. Could one of Penn State's top 2027 commits be going elsewhere? We'll discuss on the first segment of Joe and the Fat Man.